gym and gunfire. The scene, we're not getting any active stimulus at the moment. We have everything here that we need, including, medics and tactical gear. We're looking to see if there's more than one person. We're still trying to figure that out. We're trying to get access to the video. At the moment, we just tell people that shelter in place for at least a mile area until we determine that there's no one else that maybe was on foot and fled the area, until we figure out exactly what's going on, number one. Number two, reunification will be at the JCC, the Jewish Center, and that's where parents will go to pick up their kids. It's going to be secured by law enforcement, so no fear there. If you have nothing to do with the situation, don't go there. Don't come to the area. It's active and it's busy, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Guys, can you say anything about any potential casualties, anyone hurt?
Nobody at the moment has been confirmed to be hurt, except potentially the shooter.
Any ties potentially to terrorism with the president? That's
still way early to talk about. We have no idea because we don't even know who the person is at the moment.
Has that person been neutralized?
We don't have that person in custody.
So they're still on the run?
It's a work in progress. So that's why we're sheltering in place until we figure it out. It's a big facility with a lot of land around it. Until that gets secured and everybody's comfortable that there's no active threat in that spot, stay away from it, shelter in place.
We're told there's a daycare school. Are all those kids out?
Yeah, everybody's been moved out of the school. We've got a ton of people here. As I said, West Bloomfield got on scene in a heartbeat. Everybody else came from everywhere. Actually, the chief and I have been communicating for almost 2 weeks. Every time I've gotten some intelligence from the national level, I've been sharing. We've been talking for 2 weeks about the potential, sadly, of this happening. So there was no lack of preparation. In addition, all Jewish facilities in the area are going to have a lot of extra presence around it until we figure this out.
What about the school up the street? Is it safe over there? Pleasant Lake Elementary is right here?
Well, again, we would tell everybody to shelter in place.
Okay.
Was there any security at this temple, as you mentioned?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
And they engaged the threat.
So there was one person that approached the security guard and...
That's still a work in progress.
Okay, and then shots were fired?
Shots were fired.
There are reports that somebody crashed with a vehicle into the building. Is that true?
A vehicle was involved.
Did it breach the building?
We're going to get into more details when there's time for that, and the chief will lay out exactly, specifically what happened. But we just want everybody to kind of know what's happening as we get it. More will come to you.
You've been listening to the Oakland County Sheriff there, a man named Michael Bouchard, walk people through what is known at this early hour about an active shooter situation at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, about 40 minutes outside of Detroit. We've got a lot of information there, and I want to bring in our Justice correspondent, Scott McFarland, who's with me now, has been listening alongside. Scott, what stood out to you?
One immediate concern, one broader concern. First of all, the sheriff, who's been there for decades, said that there's somebody suspected of opening fire at a Jewish facility. That person has not been caught, so they've had to boost their presence at other facilities, religious facilities throughout Oakland County, Michigan. So there is somebody being sought who potentially is targeting religious facilities. That's the immediate concern. The broader concern comes from FBI bulletins we've been reading over the last few weeks and months. They have been issuing warnings from the FBI and Department of Homeland Security about extra potential targeting of Jewish institutions across America. In just the recent months, they warned that foreign terrorist organizations may try to exploit narratives related to the conflict in the Middle East to inspire attacks in the United States by Americans. That warning has gone to local police and other federal officials nationwide. Also in recent months, they've warned of increased bomb threats by malicious actors targeting Jewish facilities, community centers, schools, other religious institutions, all of that in recent months, and none of this is happening in a vacuum, Tony. It was in June in Boulder, Colorado, where several people at a pro-Israel gathering were attacked, and it was just months ago here in Washington, D.C., where 2 Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed. The man responsible, according to the feds, is facing trial.
Scott McFarland for us as we piece together what happened and is happening at West Bloomfield, Indiana, or Michigan, rather. You're looking at pictures now of what appear to be members of the SWAT team. Earlier, you might have seen pictures, an overhead shot of the temple itself and the school facility attached to it. It's a large building. It appears there is smoke of some kind pouring out of the vents. We don't have information of exactly what that is, although we did hear from the sheriff that a vehicle rammed the building, so it could be tied to that. I want to bring in Jonah Kaplan, CBS News correspondent who has spoke to members of this Temple Israel community there. Jonah, if I have you, what did they tell you? Did anybody witness what happened?
You know, Tony, a Thursday morning is not a time where you would have a lot of religious services, but many synagogues, including this one, are also preschools and religious schools. And this was a preschool day. So there were students and teachers inside, but what I've heard from witnesses and from members of that community, people who belong to that synagogue, all the kids and all the teachers are accounted for. They've been evacuated and brought to another nearby community center. And look, for members of the Jewish community across the country, this is going to be shocking but not surprising. And synagogues, day schools, any kind of Jewish institution, they've been preparing, sadly, for something like this, which is why if this alleged gunman or whoever assailant was to take a car and ram it in to a synagogue, frequently you'll see some barriers in front of synagogues. You'll see heavily fortified doors, and many preschools will have armed guards with them. So again, a shocking scenes to see, but they're not going to be surprising to many members of the Jewish community. Of course, the immediacy of this is even if you have a conflict 5,000 or 6,000 miles away, this is when you see a war felt very much at home.
Yeah, Jonah, we're looking at the overhead pictures. It really does look like a tight-knit community. There's the temple, and even in just a slight pullback of a shot, you can see the community around it, their homes. It's nestled in an area there. You know, the sheriff said that there were no injuries, which is very fortunate, except possibly the shooter. Do you have information about the alleged suspect, the possible shooter? Was he taken down?
I think the information that we're getting right now is from at least one teacher who's inside the building. Right now, I think for them, a lot of it is rumor. Yes, they've heard maybe the shooter was taken down, but we also hear from sources at the FBI that saying a shooter might still be on the loose. Everything remains on lockdown, I'm told, also because of the potential for accomplices. And are there any other people working with this gunman, driver? We don't know. We know that West Bloomfield, Michigan is home to a very strong Jewish community. About a third of the population there is Jewish. This is also one of the largest synagogues in the country. So what is happening here is going to reverberate among Jewish communities across the country.
Yeah, that's for sure, Jonah. And I let our viewers know sometimes the best thing you can say in a situation is you don't know. And there is a lot we don't know at this time, but we do know you've got smoke pouring out of this large Reformed Jewish community in West Bloomfield, Michigan. You've got the sheriff saying there was a shooter, there was a ramming, shots were fired, and there's now a shelter in place and a very significant police turnout. But we do reiterate, we don't know who is responsible for this incident in West Bloomfield, and we don't know if it's tied to the unfolding situation in the Middle East. But we are monitoring it, and I want to bring in Anna Schechter, who is our crime and public safety producer, part of that unit. What stands out to you with what we're learning so far, and what more do you want to know?
Well, listen, we're less than a week out from this incident in New York City, where we had two ISIS-inspired individuals allegedly throw these IEDs on the Upper East Side, not something you usually see on the Upper East Side. That just happened. Now we're seeing this. In fact, there was another shooting just a couple of hours ago at a university in Norfolk, Virginia. It just seems like this is what a heightened threat environment looks like. It's not just a heightened threat environment. This is an active attack environment that we're in right now. It's really remarkable, Tony.
It's a remarkable picture to see on a Thursday morning.
Yep.
In the United States of America. Let's go back to Scott McFarland, who's got new information on this. Scott?
Let's start off with the new FBI statement just issued by the director of the FBI, saying FBI personnel are on the scene now with their law enforcement partners in Michigan, responding to the apparent vehicle ramming and active shooting situation at Temple Israel Synagogue in West Bloomfield. FBI by nature, if not by rule, responds to potential shooting incidents or to any targeting of a religious facility. It's no surprise they're there. But you have to also open the question here, because the sheriff hasn't been very clear there was a shooter, but that there was a shooting. This raises the prospect that somebody may have been attacking the temple in that vehicle, and perhaps somebody in security or otherwise may have tried to stop the person in the vehicle. So we're not terribly certain right now that there's a shooter, but that there was a shooting. But nobody inside the facility was injured or has been killed by this, according to what the sheriff has said. Nevertheless, there's clearly a federal investigation in addition to the local investigation of what happened and where is the person believed responsible for this.
Yeah, you see a school bus in the background. Scott, thank you very much for the pictures we're looking at. There's a reunification center. There were kids on site. There were teachers on site. We're told they've been taken off-site and are gathering. And as we look for new information here, we have a tweet from the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, who says she's tracking these reports. She refers to the incident overall as heartbreaking. Michigan's Jewish community should be able to live and practice their faith in peace. Anti-Semitism and violence have no place in Michigan, and she is hoping for everyone's safety. Anna Schechter's still with me. Anna, you mentioned the broader context here.
Yeah. So we had a shooting in Austin, and we had a man who had a history of mental health issues, but who was wearing an Iranian regime flag on his person at the time of an attack, a deadly attack in Austin. That was right after the launch of this war with Iran. And then several days later, you have this incident in New York City. Now this, less than a week later, you have apparently an attack on one of the largest synagogues in the country. So this is very concerning. And, you know, when I talk to counterterrorism officials, they are always combing through. Their main job is looking for red flags online, looking in Telegram, looking on all the social media platforms, but it's impossible to catch everything. And you've had people, like, for example, this apparently a vehicle ramming attack, possibly a shooting. It's really hard to identify those lone wolves, and all of these have been lone wolf attacks.
Yeah, and then there's a wider population of people who might have ill thoughts, but the population who take action is much smaller, fortunately. Michael Bouchard, the Oakland City Sheriff there, to your point, he was not surprised in that briefing he had with reporters. This was something that they had been concerned about for weeks, he was saying, leading up to this. I want to go back to Jonah Kaplan, who's joining us again by phone. Jonah, you have new information?
Yeah, there's a message that's being sent to congregants of that synagogue that the lockdown is still in place, but an active shooter has been taken down. The lockdown is going to be in place until they know the shooter was working alone. Again, reiterating that all kids and all staff are accounted for. And again, the truck rammed into the front door, opened fire. And also it's possible that the security guard, an armed security guard at the synagogue, was the one who was able to take down the shooter. Of course, we're going to need confirmation from that from local authorities. But I think there's two stories here, Tony, and that is one, of course, the shooting, but second is the preparedness. What you're seeing here is the system working, that everyone in the building was accounted for, and if indeed the security guard was able to neutralize the assailant, well, then you're seeing, again, the preparedness of these Jewish institutions for these kind of threats.
It's a surreal thing to think about, Jonah, as we look at pictures of kids' play equipment outside the entrance where there is smoke pouring and people leaving the building, sirens, flashing lights outside, and people in flak jackets walking in. But you're right, that security was in place for a reason, and it seems like on this day it was necessary. Joining us now is CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. Sam, what stands out to you?
Well, Tony, I'll say it as a trained security professional, this is an emotional moment. As a mother, as an American, as a member of the Jewish community, it never gets easier seeing these images. And right now, what we are seeing is two lines of effort underway. We are seeing law enforcement officials neutralize the situation. We just heard an update from our colleague Jonah Kaplan, and the communication does indicate that the active shooter has been neutralized, but the investigation is just starting. The investigation will look at who the active shooter was, whether the active shooter was in touch with other individuals. We want to make sure this threat stream is contained. and how, when, and why this individual mobilized to violence. That is all important to try to understand if there are other active threats to this community or others. Of course, the broader threat environment here is that there's a series of threats to the Jewish community, particularly after military operations in Iran. And finally, there are efforts to ensure that the congregants and their children are reunited as safely and quickly as possible. So all of that is unfolding now.
All right, Sam, we also have a statement that just came in from Haley Stevens, congressperson who represents West Bloomfield, Michigan. To the Jewish American community in Michigan and beyond, we stand with you. She says, to recap, if you're just joining us, CBS News is monitoring a shooting at a synagogue in West Bloomfield, Michigan. At this time, no confirmed injuries. It's a concerning situation. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight with me on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Tony DeCopo.